shit on. Oh, good morning, everyone. Hello. Hello. Hope everyone's ready for a fun, lore-filled day of Warhammer 40K. I'm waiting for my co-op partner, Volt, to wake up. Probably up reading lore all night, like he does. In the meantime, I was thinking maybe we watch a lore video while we wait for him. Right now we're in Kamara, trying to escape Kamara, and we just picked up a Space Wolf. So I was thinking maybe what would be cool is pulling up some Space Wolf lore. I know that Fault shared with us a video yesterday, and he was all like, you have to watch this. I believe that is the lore that he wants me to educate myself on. Here we go. I'll also probably pull up a video to watch as well. Probably should put us at just chatting for right now. And I'll switch us over to playing after just chatting. Right, so the Space Wolves, now in the game, what we had just done, if I were to look at this, we're in the anatomical opera in Kamara, and we just picked up the Space Wolf. We finally got him out of the cage, which I'm pretty happy about. And Space Wolf lore. The settings here. Let me go ahead and we'll go ahead and mute the sound for right now, and we'll put on our own music to Warhammer Darktide soundtrack. That'll do, pig. That'll do. And we'll switch back over to the lore. Nice. Good. Everything looks like it's good and on, and everything works. Okay, so the Space Wolves, also Sky Warriors of Russ, Rout, Vilka, Fenrika, or Wolves of Fenris and Fenrisian, where the 6th Legion of the 20th Space Marine, there we go, 20th Space Marine Legions, their Primarch is Leman Russ, and during the Great Crusade they gained a reputation as the Emperor's executioners and instruments of punishment. After the Horus Heresy and the resultant reforms, the Legion was divided, its first and only time, into 2 chapters. The new Space Wolves chapter retained the name of their parent legion, while the second chapter took the name of the Wolf Brothers. The later, however, suffered from mutation and were disbanded. Oh, okay. That doesn't sound very good for them. Does not sound very good for them. I've seen pictures of space wolves turning into like werewolves. These things, the wolfen. I've seen this before. So, yeah. I guess maybe that's what the mutation issue came about was, or why they were disbanded. I don't know. We'll continue to read. The Space Wolves are notorious throughout the rest of the Imperium for their ferocity in battle, their defiance of authority, including the dictates of the Codex Astartes that govern the organization and combat doctrines of other Space Marine chapters. They're generally considered the greatest warriors of the Loyalist Astartes chapters. Oh, okay. Their Primarch is Leman Russ, their homeworld is Fenris, their fortress monastery is called the Fang. They definitely are thinking outside the box here. Their color is gray. I almost always wear gray, which is kind of funny to me. Like, my pants are gray, like, shirts are gray. Most of my hats are gray. Like, I wear very few other colors besides gray. I like tan. I like, you know, a nice Air Force blue. You know, maybe I get a little bit more in common with the Space Wolves than I thought. Specialty assault and close combat. That's the way I usually play my games too. And strength, great companies. Battle cry for Russ and the Allfather, or just a feral howl. Okay, well, we'll have to say for Russ and the Allfather a bit. Fenris is their homeworld. It is a death world that lies in the galactic north of Segmentum Solar. It is located relatively close to the Eye of Terror. It's also the planet where the mighty Space Wolves recruit their ranks and call home. It is a relentless world of fire and ice, ravaged by extremes of climate all year round. For the majority of its year, the planet is blanketed by an extreme winter. The temperature of the planet drops so low that even the oceans ice over, allowing its native Fenrisians to travel between its many islands without the need of a longship. After its long elliptical journey, the planet comes dangerously close to its sun. It is the short summer months when the planet is closest to the planet's crust is broken, burning great areas with lava flows, churning the seas, and causing massive tidal waves. It's during these months, referred to as the time of fire and water, that the whole of the planet changes its form. Islands are both destroyed and created in entirety, upheaving homes made during the winter and resulting in the population becoming once again nomadic barbarian tribes. These primitives must settle the new lands quickly before supplies and manpower are exhausted, otherwise their tribe will not survive the long coming winter. The results in bloody war between them for new territories, so it has always been and shall be as it was directed by Leman Russ himself to keep his descendants strong and able. It is because of this life of constant warfare and continual migration that the child gift is always the axe. So, like, congratulations for surviving another year. Your Christmas present is my axe. Feel like I need to go get my axe. You know what? I will go get my axe. And my axe. I have a tree stump next to my door where I keep my my axe in. And as you can see, it's got a wolf head on it. So yeah. Maybe a little on the nose. I gotta put this in something. Needs a sharpening. I'll have to sharpen her later. Hang out right there. You're good. That's even better. I'll just put it right there. Fair. And my axe. Okay. Thus upon birth the first test has begun, for the child that does not grasp it is quickly cast into the frozen seas, rather than risk him being the downfall of the tribe. So when they're born, if they don't grab a hold of the axe when it's handed to them, they just throw them in the sea. If you don't grab a hold of this axe, right meow, I'm gonna throw you in the ocean. Even if it's frozen. Doesn't even make sense. At the planet's northern pole is a single continent called Asahim. Asahim, I think. That alone is unaffected by the time of fire and water. This is the only location that a great many of the planet's unique creatures can survive. These include snow trolls, shape-shifting doppelgangers, and massive worms that burrow the landscape. The deadliest of all these creatures is the Fenrisian wolf, a deadly predator with wits that are as sharp as its teeth. Though lethal on its own, these keep to their namesake, traveling the icy wastes in packs. The remote land also houses the Sky Warriors of Russ and the Hall of the Gods. The ultimate triumph of Fenrisian culture is to become one of the chosen sons of Russ and await the final battle at the end of the universe. Although Fenris is the home of the Space Wolves, the chapter only houses the island continent. Their fortress, the Fang, lies at Asahim's largest peak. The peak rises above the clouds and even beyond the atmosphere where the space-faring vessels of the route are docked. Oh, that's badass. They just got like a fucking tower into space. You know, the more I learn about the Space Wolves, the more that I like them. Don't get me wrong, I love my Blood Angels. But I feel like the Space Wolves are calling to me. Before the coming of their Primarch Leman Russ, the Space Wolves were known as the Sixth Legion and was made up of a diverse range of savage and hyper-violent tribesmen from Terra. Alongside the Salamanders and Alpha Legion, the early Space Wolves were among the Trefoil Legions. Those given highly specialized unique gene seed by the Emperor for unknown ends. Like the other Trefoil Legions, the Sixth was held back from most of the fighting in the Unification Wars and the conquest of the Sol System. The Emperor kept the Legion in deliberate isolation from the rest of their peers. I've heard a little bit about this, like the reason why is because they're built and designed to police the other legions. Like if another legion gets out of line, they come in and like act as the executioner. So they have to be good at killing other space marines. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that's what I remember hearing. A decade into the Great Crusade, the Sixth Legion was finally unleashed onto the galaxy by the Emperor. Its first major battle saw all 3,500 legionnaires of the Sixth assail the world of Delsvan as part of the first expeditionary fleet under the command of the Emperor himself. Oh shit. So he took him in himself. He's like, alright, you're coming with me. The Sixth operation was led by the Legion's first master, Enoch Rathven, who initiated a vicious shock assault on the enemy lines. It was during this battle that the Sixth reputation for vicious and brutal assaults was born. The Great Massacre at Delsvin's city of Massanore Corps, Massanore Corps, further solidified this reputation. The early Sixth demonstrated a severe lack of discipline and were prone to acts of extreme aggression, as demonstrated by the wanton slaughter of civilians in the Malorian Revolt. As consequence, the Legion instituted a large disciplinary corps consisting of consul obsequiari officers. Interesting. So they had to get some police involved. They're like a picture of what they look like. Oh, that's what these guys are. Okay, so that's their own personal internal police force. It looks like it. Despite their status as a small legion during this time, they often served alongside other legions and large imperial army forces in major campaigns, or were entrusted with smaller, often bloody missions to destroy particular knots of enemy resistance in shock assaults. Over time, the Legion developed particular expertise also in conducting rapidly moving hunter-killer operations, particularly in city fighting conditions, or in undertaking more generally punitive actions, such as suppressing rebellions by inflicting short, brutal reprisal actions. By the second decade of the Great Crusade, the Sixth Legion had already earned its reputation as the Emperor's agents of fear and retribution, becoming known as the Rout. And in war and combat and all that kind of stuff, a rout is where the other, the opposing faction retreats, and the attacking enemy continues to attack the fleeing people. Something going on with my camera. I'm gonna just go ahead and leave it off. I think what happened was it lost its charge over the night because the power was out. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off for now. Then I'll turn it back on later when it's got a little bit of charge to it. Even though it's plugged in, I have like a little software thing that allows me to use it as a webcam. Might not be like the best camera to do so, but it works. It's just the battery has to be fully charged for it to work correctly. If the battery gets too low, it stops working. Here. Cool. Just had to set a status there really quick. Now, about the rest of this, I know quite a bit about, at least I've read a bit about this faction, but some of this is pretty interesting to go over. I wouldn't mind putting on a YouTube Space Wolf lore video. We have Wes Hammer here who's talking about specifically the Space Wolves.
1 year ago, I said one of the most controversial things that anyone has ever uttered within the Warhammer.
And if we're gonna, might as well pause this. Take a look here real quick. It's a fairly long video, so I don't know if I'm gonna watch the whole thing, but we can check it out.
1 year ago, I said one of the most controversial things that anyone has ever uttered within the Warhammer community. It was a hot take so hot that I was convinced it was going to start a full-scale uprising and be the end of my career as a lore tuber. But consequences be damned. I loudly and confidently stated that the Space Wolves, one of the most popular factions in all of 40K, actually kind of sucked. And the reaction...
Whoa, he said that? Holy shit, man. That is not a hot take. That is just a straight slight.
was honestly not what I was expecting. Now don't get me wrong, there were certainly some unhinged comments, and maybe a tasteful death threat or two. But the response from even self-proclaimed diehard Space Wolf fans was actually kind of reasonable. However, a ton of people told me that I wasn't being fair, that I was judging my opinion on them solely on how they were portrayed in the Horus Heresy, that I needed to do my due diligence and read about them in 40K in order for my opinion to carry any kind of weight. But was this...
Wait a minute. So Home Dude had a hot take about Space Wolves before even reading about them? Like that's just an uninformed take. That's not even like a hot take. That's just, why would I listen to you if you can't even like be bothered to have an opinion about something without even like having a cursory knowledge on it? That's silly.
It's true. Were the Space Wolves of the modern setting really that radically different from their ancient counterpart? Now, sure, a lot can happen in 10,000 years, but let's be honest, this is 40K we're talking about. Most factions look and act pretty damn similar no matter how much time has passed. In order to get to the bottom of this, I did a whole lot of reading into my least favorite faction in the entire setting, in order to on one hand challenge myself and see if mayhaps I had been wrong, and two, to see if my righteous hatred was actually justified. To start this video off, I'm going to give you my super spicy take on why I absolutely couldn't stand the 30K Wolves, why I thought they were the worst faction with some of the worst writing in all of the Horus Heresy, and then we're going to transition into everything that I've learned about them in 40K. And I'll tell you right now, it's kind of like night and day. It really is like reading about two completely different factions. Heads up, if I sound a little off in this video, I'm getting over being sick. I somehow managed to catch a cold going camping. You know, that activity that's famous for having tons of people around. Anyways, we've got a lot to cover in this video, but before we dive headfirst into the Grimdark, a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus.
If you're a fan of Warhammer 40,000, and more specifically the Space Wolves, then now is the absolute perfect time to start playing Tacticus, as Ragnar Blackmane, Wolf Lord of the Blackmane's great company, just got added to the game. This dude is supremely confident and always the first into the fray. Now, he may not be as headstrong as he was in his youth, but his berserker rage is still a furious hurricane of violence. As a diehard 40K fan, it blows me away just how many iconic heroes they managed to cram into this game, while making sure that each and every one of them feels incredibly unique and has a very specific role that they fill. The game currently has 14 unique factions and dozens of champions to collect and battle with more being added all the time. Tacticus is one of those games that's easy to learn but difficult to master due to its complex system of overlapping passive abilities, as well as powerful active abilities that can turn the tide in even the hardest of battles. Matches are fast-paced and intense, which makes it super easy to pick up and play. There's so much you can do in this game that if I ever get stuck on a particularly hard fight, I can jump into a different game mode to hone my skills and level up my squad in order to go back and dominate whatever roadblock I happen to hit. You can download the game for free today by clicking on the link in the description of this
You know what?
video
I am
or
gonna
scanning my
download
QR
it.
code here on the screen.
I scanned
and
your
when you
QR
log in,
code.
use the
How
code
about them
WestBlackMain11 to get a huge free reward of 2,000 coins, 200 Blackstone, and 2 requisition orders in order to give yourself a big head start. And if you're already playing the game, that code works for you too. None of that only for new players nonsense like in some other games. Big thanks to Warhammer Tacticus for sponsoring this video. As I mentioned in the intro of this video, for the longest time I was not a fan of the Space Wolves, and I said some pretty damning things about them in a few of my previous videos, which is not the norm for me. I tend to like everything in Warhammer, and I do admit I have a reputation for calling everything my favorite thing. It's actually genuinely hard for me to find something that I don't like in this setting. That wasn't the case with the Wolves. I absolutely hated the 6th Legion. I just found myself constantly and consistently having my experience lessened with a novel whenever they showed up. This was mostly due to the fact that my introduction to them was through the Horus Heresy. I never really personally had much interest in them, so I avoided reading their 40K novels, and it painted a really bad picture of the WH40K. However, after I made those videos, I got a lot of comments from you guys saying that their 40K version was a lot different, and I should give them a chance, because I'd probably end up liking them. So that's what I did, and I'm here to fully eat crow and admit that I was wrong. The 40K Wolves are awesome. They're a genuine joy to read about. But I'm gonna put a big old caveat here. I still despise the way they're portrayed in 30K. And to better understand the massive difference between both iterations of the WH40K, I'm gonna need to go back to the Horus Heresy and set the groundwork for their dramatic transformation. I'm gonna be retreading some territory that I've already covered in other videos, so if you don't want to hear me rant about how the Space Wolves of the Great Crusade are the absolute worst, then just go ahead and skip to the next part of this video. I'm gonna put this as gently as possible. The Space Wolves from the Horus Heresy fucking suck. Even in a galaxy full of people that seem to pride themselves on their hypocrisy, the Space Wolves stand apart as the biggest and worst hypocrites in the entirety of the setting. And hey, hypocrisy and 40K characters can often go hand in hand. That's not necessarily the problem. The problem is that they are never challenged on their hypocrisy. They're never forced to confront their own hubris and are never given an opportunity for growth. Whether that be from a character or faction in universe, or the narrative itself, as the text of the novels will often bend over backwards to pat them on the back, treating their mistakes, stupid decisions, and inability to have any form of self-reflection that challenges their way of thinking as somehow an honorable quality. Frankly speaking, they are written in a way that is nearly identical to how the Chaos Legions are portrayed. The major difference being that with the traitors, all of these negative traits are directly challenged. They have consequences and are punished for their arrogance. This never happens with the Wolves, which for me makes them incredibly frustrating to read about. Take possibly their biggest hypocrisy, their views on psychers. They view anyone who utilizes the powers of the warp as a witch that needs to be eradicated. Yet meanwhile, they're doing the exact same thing with the Rune Priest. They claim it's different because they touch some grass and say a quick prayer to Mother Fenris before casting a spell, and they claim that they're only using 1% of their true power, as if this somehow makes it okay. If that was the case, then why not share their secrets of rune magic with the rest of the legions? Why not make that knowledge widely available? Because it's a lie. One that they've told themselves so many times that they forget that they're lying and have fully bought into their own propaganda. They act as if they are the only ones that are capable of wielding it appropriately, yet over on Chagoris with the White Scars, their version of sorcery is...
I didn't know that. That's actually pretty hilarious. I'm still learning about this faction. That's why Folt wanted me to read some of this stuff and educate myself. I've read some of his books on it, right? Like I've borrowed some books from him and read I think like maybe 4. I think he has like 4 of them on the Space Wolves. That back when I was we were roommates a long time ago. So I did get the chance to like read some of their stories, but they're all 40K stories. I think. I might be mistaken. He would be the better one to tell me which one was which, but I definitely remember reading about them in the Horus Heresy and post-Horus Heresy. As far as like some of the lore deep cuts, I'm not as knowledgeable on, so I didn't know about that one. they had like, I know that they had beef with witches, but I don't know, I didn't know that it was like that though.
Nearly identical. However, the major difference there is that the White Scars are not a legion of hypocrites like the Wolves are. They defended Magnus the Red and the Thousand Sons at the Council of Nicaea. Now, it's true that Jagatai warned Magnus that he needed to be careful and limitations were important, but they understood that psychic abilities were not inherently evil. They were a tool that could be used for great good if respected and used appropriately. The Space Wolves' continued use of psychic abilities while going after the Thousand Sons for doing the exact same thing is truly an example of denouncing something as evil in public, yet continuing to do the exact same thing themselves. Laws are made for thee, but not for me. In the same vein, they pointed to the flesh change of the Thousand Sons as evidence for their corruption. Yet by this point in time, the curse of the Wolfen had made itself known, and they had had multiple Space Wolves go full-blown werewolf. The absolute worst thing that ever happened with them during the Horus Heresy was the burning of Prospero. Now don't get it twisted, the Prosperian story arc is incredible. It's got excellent writing, it's heartbreaking, it's one of the best story arcs in the entirety of the Horus Heresy. But every single element about the Wolves' involvement in it is horrendously stupid and badly written. First and foremost, Leman Russ, the worst Primarch, only initiated the burning of Prospero.
Did he just say the worst Primarch? Did he just try to like slip that in, like people weren't gonna notice? Come on.
Because he was tricked by Horus. His direct orders from the Emperor were to capture Magnus alive so he could stand trial, and Horus changed the message to kill Magnus and the Thousand Sons. He didn't even question this. It's exactly what he wanted. He just needed an excuse. Even Constantine Valdor, who was with him at the time and participated in the battle, stated that this did not sound like what the Emperor would have wanted. And let me be 100% clear about the burning of Prospero. In the lore, it's treated like this spectacular moment in history, a bombastic, over-the-top battle, a clashing of titans. And that's true in a sense, but what it actually was a genocide. It was a massacre. Over 30 million people lost their lives, the vast majority of them being civilians. The novel A Thousand Sons is a great book, one of my favorites in the entirety of the Horus Heresy, but it doesn't really do a great job of portraying just how bloody this battle was. If you want to get a sense of this, then track down the Horus Heresy Black Book Inferno. The first half of the actual fight itself is just the wolves massacring civilians. Now, a few times during the battle, they tried to claim that they only attacked civilians if they were armed, which of course they were. There were tons of different bands of civilian militias that had formed as their world was being invaded, and they were defending their homes. They had absolutely no chance against Space Marines. And bear in mind,
look at those fucking claws. What are those things? Are those like electro vibro blade fucking claws? Like what is that even? That's nuts.
Other than the Prosperian Guard, who were members of the Astra Militarum that were stationed on Prospero, the vast majority of these people were not soldiers. They didn't know how to fight, and their weapons couldn't even chink the ceramite armor of the Space Wolves. So it was just a massacre. And not that it would somehow justify the Space Wolves' actions if this somehow wasn't the case, but bear in mind that these people are Imperium citizens. The Wolves were slaughtering their own people, and these people were being attacked by the ones that were supposed to keep them safe. And even the idea of letting civilians live if they didn't have a gun is a concept that goes right out the window on multiple occasions throughout the book. The most horrific scene to me is when Leman Russ first joined in the fighting, as it serves as a perfect example of how the narrative twists itself to make these guys into heroes, when in reality, they're nothing but idiotic, hypocritical butchers. The wolves had pressed into the city.
Damn, tell us how you really feel. This guy's, okay.
And at this point, within only an hour or so, the death toll was in its hundreds of thousands. The Thousand Sons themselves hadn't directly got involved yet. There's a scene where hordes of terrified civilians are moving through the bloodstained streets, desperately seeking sanctuary. They move towards the gate of an ancient fortress that had been hastily put into service, known as the Acropolis Magna. The problem was, there were so many people pressed up against the gates that they couldn't get them open. Even worse, the turrets and all of the guns that had been placed here were bogged down in so many bodies that they couldn't be brought to bear against the wolves, who at this point were marching in, with the Wolf King himself, Leman Russ, leading the pack. In the text itself, the story actually cuts off here and instead gives us an excerpt from one of the Space Wolves in 40K's myths about the event. And this is what it had to say. And so did the King of Wolves come upon the servants of his warp-touched brother, finding them sealed within the iron hearth that served as their lair. Where the Raven's friends could not reach with their bright sea flames, the Ringbreaker of the Six took hold of the hearth's maw, his mighty thews straining at the effort and pried it asunder, breaking the jaws apart. Across the smashed gullet of the fortress, the steeds of midnight, the sons of Fenris, came howling for the blood of the foe, and within the span of heartbeats, there was left only food for the crows. Looking upon the work of his children, the broken corpses of the foe, the Wolf King judged it well and good. A few paragraphs later, it talks about how one of the strategies the Wolves would use was to herd civilians in the direction of the last remaining holdouts of Prosperian Guard. In this way, they would be so choked by refugees that they would be easily and effectively neutralized. Now, here's the thing. Super bloody grimdark stuff like this is par for the course when it comes to Warhammer, but it's never portrayed as this super heroic thing without a whole bunch of caveats, a very specific subtext, or a character telling us just how horrible it actually was, that it was a necessary evil that had to be done. On the other hand, when those caveats aren't there, the act is normally being perpetuated by characters that are being portrayed as the bad guys, like Chaos or Xenos. As then, there's no need for the subtext. The entirety of the text is showing us that this is an evil, unforgivable act. So again, the Wolves' actions are more aligned with a Chaos faction than a Loyalist one. I tell you all of this because I really want to make it clear that this is the reason I had avoided their books for so long. And don't get me wrong, I love reading about the villains. The Chaos factions are some of my favorite. But if the text was trying to tell me that they were actually the good guys and every single thing that they were doing was super duper justified.
All right, so he just outed himself right there. He said that he likes some of the Chaos factions, and if the Chaos factions are doing the same thing, and it's really like it's how his perspective of them was, right? Oh, well, they're on the loyalist side, so they have to be loyalist faction, but they're not.
I don't think I would enjoy that, but that's what's happening with the 30K Space Wolves. I assumed it was going to be the exact same thing with them in 40K, as for the most part, even though 10,000 years have passed, there's a solid through line with each of the legions between their modern interpretation and their ancient ancestors. Ultramarines are still Ultramarines, Salamanders are still Salamanders. Even with the Chaos Legions, who have undergone dramatic transformations, they make sense with their story arc. The obsession with perfection of the Emperor's children leading them down a path of damnation that twisted them into a degenerate pack of excess-addicted hedonites makes sense. The Death Guard being a legion of attrition-style warfare specialists that were tough as nails and ritualistically drank poison for fun, being turned into the Plague Marines makes sense. So, like I said before, I assumed it would be the same with the Wolves. And I'm here to tell you that I was incredibly wrong about this. The Space Wolves of the 41st and 42nd millennium are awesome and a radically different legion that is actually a genuine joy to read about. Okay, so now that you've made it all the way through my long-winded rant about the Space Wolves, now is the part of the video where I eat crow, where I fully admit that I was wrong about these guys and provide evidence to support
Damn right.
the fact that I'm kind of an idiot. And to do that, I want to highlight 3 specific examples of the Space Wolves being awesome. Those are the Months of Shame, because it's a classic, the return of the Wolfen in Warzone Fenris, and a short story that I read recently from the Successors book about a Space Wolf delegation going to meet their first successful successor chapter, the Wolf Spear. If you don't know much about the Months of Shame, I'm going to give you an abridged version of it here because I do plan on covering it more in depth in the future. The basic gist of it is that this is a period in time that took place directly after the First War for Armageddon, after Angron and his forces had been defeated. The Inquisition determined that for the greater good, all of the human fighters that had taken part in the battle and had witnessed the horrors of chaos firsthand would need to be eradicated, in order to keep that information from spreading out into the public and to contain any potential chaos corruption that may have taken root in their souls. The Space Wolves had fought to defend the people of this world and were not told about the Inquisition's intentions, but Logan Grimnar was suspicious, so right after the battle ended, he ordered his fleet to stay in orbit. And sure enough, his suspicions would be well-founded, as all of the civilians that lived on this planet were going to be rounded up and put into forced labor camps where they would be sterilized and then effectively be worked to death. All of the forces of the Astra Militarum that were attempting to leave had their ships fired upon by the Grey Knights. As soon as this began, the Space Wolves immediately sprang into action, putting their ships in between both sides and getting caught in the line of fire. Their quick action saved the lives of tens of thousands of people as the troop transports were able to get away. But it wasn't over. Now, after the fact, the Lord Inquisitor, who was in charge of this entire thing, ordered the Grey Knights to go out and exterminatus any planet that any single one of those soldiers came into contact with, even if their troop transports were simply stopping there for a day to refuel. Now, likewise, the Inquisition itself began to hunt them down, destroying several of these ships while they were in warp transit. Once again, the Space Wolves came to their aid, tracking down those ships and protecting them, or going to those worlds and getting in the way so the Grey Knights couldn't blow them up. The biggest thing to bear in mind here is that the Space Wolves never returned fire, not a single shot, no matter how many of their battle brothers died or how much damage their ships sustained. They knew that if they fought back, that was the only excuse the Inquisition would need to declare them excommunicate traitores. Now, after a certain point, the Inquisition seemed like it was agreeing to a ceasefire and called them to a neutral location to discuss terms. But as soon as the Space Wolves showed up, they opened fire, destroying 4 of the 5 ships that had appeared in orbit. Now, Logan Grimnar was furious and teleported aboard the Lord Inquisitor's flagship, feigning a surrender. When he got there, he had some pretty strong words for him, calling him a coward, someone who would openly spit on the tradition of parley and diplomacy. Now, when it was revealed that the at the time Grand Master of the Grey Knights had ordered the attack, Logan Grimnar used his magical power axe to cut him in half, and then him and the Terminators that had been escorting him killed the remaining Grey Knights before teleporting away. After this point, it was basically a full-blown war between the Space Wolves, the Grey Knights, and the Inquisition, and the Space Wolves showed no mercy to any of their ships they encountered. To say that the Lord Inquisitor was furious is a huge understatement. Not so much for the loss of lives, he didn't really care much about that, but for the sheer audacity of the Wolves for ignoring his orders. This wasn't about revenge, it was about authority. He wanted the Wolves, and more specifically their chapter master, dragged before him on their knees, begging for forgiveness. So a massive Inquisition fleet went to Fenris with an ultimatum: either go on a penitent crusade for your crimes or be destroyed. They were fully expecting the Wolves to comply with this, because why would you want to have your historic chapter just wiped out? But when they got there, they very quickly realized that the Valka Fenrique had no intention of surrendering. When they got there, it seemed like nobody was home. There was only a single wounded ship in orbit. But shortly after this, the entirety of the Space Wolves fleet arrived, and a huge battle ensued, with massive losses on both sides. Now, after a while of fighting, Bjorn the Fell-Handed managed to convince Grimnar to stand down. There had been too much fighting and too much blood spilled on both sides, to which the Space Wolves and the Inquisition begrudgingly agreed. The Inquisition would limp away with their tail between their legs that day, and although it seemed like everything was going back to normal, the Wolves never forgot what happened during this year-long conflict, and hostility still bubbles just under the surface to this day. To their credit, the Grey Knights look back on this period of time with great sadness and humility, and they're actually the ones who came up with the term Months of Shame. Now, after hearing all about the Months of Shame, I want you to compare that to the burning of Prospero. Regardless of how you feel about the Wolves, the Thousand Sons, whether or not you think the Sons deserved what they got, whether they had it coming, anything like that, the human population of Prospero was not spared the brutality of the Wolves. Over 30 million civilians were massacred. Compare that to the 40K Wolves, who are willing to risk everything to stand up for what is right, who are willing to not only sacrifice their lives to defend the citizens of the Imperium, but put themselves in the direct line of fire and have the restraint to not fight back. I think this is a great example of just how much the Space Wolves have changed. But the funny thing is, I haven't been able to find a specific example of when that change occurred. It honestly seems like it came about when Leman Russ disappeared. But hey, I would never insinuate that the worst Legion got a whole lot better when the worst Primarch suddenly vanished. That would be irresponsible and ridiculous.
Why does he keep saying he's the worst Primarch? That's like, it's kind of tilting. Not gonna lie. There's so many other Primarchs that are so much worse than him.
Instead, let's talk about the events of Warzone Fenris, as it's a great example of why the modern Space Wolves are so much better than their Horus Heresy counterparts. At one point during this campaign, these Space Wolves encountered a massive amount of Wolfen. It was revealed that this had been the missing 13th Great Company that had disappeared after going through a portal on Prospero in an attempt to chase down a Thousand Sun sorcerer and those under his command.
So that's what I was saying before about.
I actually went over the wolf.
The Wolfen. I think their artist depiction is kind of make him look a little bit ugly, but.
In this particular moment in time in pretty extensive detail in a different video, so check that out if you want to know more about them in particular. But the major takeaway is that when the Space Wolves were presented with a situation wherein they met a bunch of clearly mutated Marines, and one of their primary tenets is to suffer not the mutant to live, they reacted in a way that you wouldn't expect. They took them in. They did everything they could to protect them by going on a massive journey to gather them all up after they had been dislodged after exiting the Eye of Terror. Now, just to be clear, a lot of the Space Wolf hierarchy.
So when they were in the Eye of Terror is when they got changed? That would make sense. Yeah, so they're like victims of the warp. I can see how they weren't too eager to kill them.
Higher-ups had differing opinions on the situation. One of them wanted to gather them all up because they could prove to be a valuable weapon, while others felt that bringing them all together was the best way of keeping them hidden, because if the Inquisition caught wind of a bunch of werewolf space marines, that would draw some pretty uncomfortable conclusions about the chapter. But the idea of simply culling them was never on the table. When the Dark Angels caught wind of what was happening and went to inspect, they found the Wolfen and immediately tried to kill them. But the Space Wolves got between them. The Dark Angels were like, dude, I understand that those used to be Space Wolves and all, but I mean, just look at them. We're not talking about just some minor mutation here. Those are full-blown werewolves. Stand down and let us do what needs to be done. And the Space Wolves were like, absolutely not. We're not going to allow you to hurt them. You need to turn around and go back the way you came. The Dark Angels told them point blank that if they tried to stop them, then this would be a declaration of war. And the Space Wolves didn't flinch. They didn't give a fuck. They were like, we're not gonna let you hurt them, dude. Consequences be damned. There's even a point where the Grey Knights get involved, and they've caught wind of what's going on with the Wolfen, and Logan Grimnar stares them down and is like, I don't know what you think you've heard, but I promise you you're wrong. And pressing the matter any further with me is not a wise decision. He's so fucking awesome. And you know, mutants get kind of a bad deal in the war-torn galaxy of the 41st millennium, and for me, having been somebody who most of my reading about the wolves came from the Horus Heresy, this came so out of left field for me, and it was honestly just such a refreshing change of pace. You pretty much never see anybody stand up for mutants, let alone the Space Wolves. This is one of those key moments where my opinion on them really started to change. But the final nail in the coffin for my Space Wolf hate would come a little while later when I started reading through all the anthology books. And I'm not gonna lie to you, this is a much smaller story with smaller implications. But it's these short, humanizing stories to me that are my favorite part about 40K. The short story in question is simply called The Wolves, and it details the rise of the Primaris chapter of Space Wolves known as the Wolf Spears. If you know anything about the Space Wolves, you know that they don't have any successor chapters. The first couple of attempts they had in making them ended in disaster due to some Thousand Sons fuckery. So this is kind of a big deal. This is their first successful successor chapter, and the Wolf Spears, for the most part, are not born of Fenris.
Yeah, I didn't know this. That's pretty interesting.
They were all taken as children by Call's agents from all over the galaxy. They don't really know anything about their homeworld and have never met any other Space Wolves. So when the Space Wolf delegation shows up, they're super excited but also nervous about it. This meeting kinda came out of nowhere and didn't have any warning, so they're scrambling to put everything together, get into parade formation, and look presentable for their guests. These are their respected brothers, people that they look up to, but they've never met them, and they really want to impress their older siblings. When their ship touches down, 3 Space Wolves step out to greet the warriors. One, a Primaris Marine who has crossed the Rubicon named Yarman.
This is the guy that's in our party in Rogue Trader. He's the guy we're going to be playing today when Folk gets online. So that to give you a little bit of context.
When their ship touches down, 3 Space Wolves step out to greet the warriors. One, a Primaris Marine who has crossed the Rubicon named Yarman. One Firstborn named Troels. And a Wolf Priest named Ulfar. When the Wolf Priest goes to speak, he addresses them with a slightly mocking tone. noting that there isn't very many of them and not to be too flattered, they were sending delegates out to meet all of the new Primaris chapters. If this had been the 30K Space Wolves, I do not for a moment think that the leader of the pack wouldn't have spit in their face and mocked them for not being true Velka Fenrique, for knowing nothing of Fenris or their traditions and being nothing more than a bunch of pretenders and LARPers. But that's not what happens here. In fact, far from it, their interaction is actually kind of amazing and heartfelt. Now don't get it twisted, the Wolf Priest is definitely messing with them. He's acting super stern and gruff and talking about how he's going to judge them all harshly and see if they're worthy to call themselves Space Wolves. But the reality is, behind this gruff demeanor, he's actually kind of excited to see these new wolves. He's come to teach them everything he can about the traditions of the Velka Fenrique, of their history of Fenris, and the legacy of Leman Russ. When he addresses the crowd, only a couple of the Primaris Marines here are actually born of Fenris, but again, they were super young when they were kidnapped by Call's agents, so they don't know anything of their homeworld. He points out one of them because of the markings on his helmet and asks him if he's a lieutenant, and the Marine jokingly says that that's what the stripes on his helmet indicate. The Wolf Priest can't help himself. He belly laughs and says that he likes him. He plans on using him as an intermediary between him and the Primaris Marines, because he's well aware that his Fenrisian manners are not to everyone's taste, and it would certainly help in the teaching process if he had someone born of Fenris to work with him. Then he does something that is completely uncharacteristic of the Space Wolves if you're looking at them back in 30K. He turns to the chapter master and asks him if that is okay, if he gives him permission to take this lieutenant under his wing. And the chapter master accepts. The lieutenant's name was Biani Arvisin, and Ulfar takes him to the side and tells him that they have a lot of work to do. There was a lot he had to teach them. But before they could get all that underway, there was something very important that had to happen first. There was a pause, and the three Space Wolves looked at each other and then back at Biani. He looks at them and asks, "You want ale, don't you?" The three Space Wolves look super excited, and one of them even says that this guy is definitely a true son of Fenris. All jokes aside, yes, that is absolutely what they wanted. Ulfar tells him it had been a long journey across the stars, and their thirst was great. The scene cuts to later that night, and they're all gathered in the food hall drinking heavily. Unfortunately, the ale that these guys have is not up to the Fenrisians' taste. One of the Space Wolves spits it out onto the ground in a big dramatic fashion, standing up and saying how disgusting it is. How can you drink this horse piss? There's just kind of an awkward silence that hangs in the air after this moment. The Space Wolf in question then does something else that is unthinkable for a Space Wolf. He apologizes and says that that was out of line and sits back down. But he comments that the Primaris chapter doesn't seem to joke around or talk much. The younger man is oddly quiet. There's a battle raging in his mind. Sure, he was born of Fenris, but he doesn't know anything about it. He doesn't have any memories of that place and knows practically nothing about his homeworld. He was raised to worship the Sky Warriors, and he technically is one, but he's not a Space Wolf. He feels like a counterfeit, like an imposter, and even though he doesn't admit it openly, he desperately wants the approval of these older men. Another one of them says that ale is ale, and that he clearly had better manners than his brother did. But even still, this guy needed to learn to answer an insult. He didn't look like a Space Marine, he looked nervous, like a maiden on her wedding night. And to this, the Wolf Priest has something to say.
Leave him be, Yaman. You do not answer. I understand. To admit weakness is hard. But I have seen that look, the one you have on your face right now, the one on the faces of many others. Yours is not the first Ultima pack we have visited. We are a singular chapter of great and noble heritage. We are bred of an unusual world. We've had few successors until now. The situation is unique in our history. Before now, we have not enjoyed the extended brotherhood the other legions have maintained. There are not untold numbers of Lord Russ's sons, as there are of Gilliman or Sanguinius. But it is hardest of all, I think, to be a Fenris, and to be a Space Marine, and not be of the great companies.
The younger Primaris Marine tells him that he doesn't know how to explain how he feels, that he's a Space Wolf, but he's not a Space Wolf. And one of the others snaps at him and tells him not to use that name, that was for the outsiders. They were the Velka Fenrica. The Wolf Priest tells him to cut him some slack. He would know that if he hadn't been taken from Fenris against his will, but he can see it in his eyes. He knows that if he had remained on Fenris, he would have been chosen. He was a great judge of men, but there was one thing that his brothers were in fact right about. The ale was terrible. The next lesson was starting right now, and was one of the most important things about the Velka Fenrica. He tells him to listen well. They would teach him of Mjord. Later on in the story, the two groups end up battling against an incursion of Khorne demons together, as that was the entire purpose of the Wolf Spears. They were stationed on this world as warp portals had been continuously spawning every night, and demons were pouring through. What follows is an amazing, albeit kind of short battle scene due to the nature of this being a short story, wherein Bjarni actually manages to defeat a Herald of Khorne in one-on-one combat, an act that the Wolf Priest was incredibly impressed by. After the fighting was done, the Wolf Priest says that he has made a full assessment of the chapter. Before he turns to take his leave, he tells them that he has one final thing to say to them. You never were and never will be a Space Wolf, but you and your men are of the Velka Fenrika, and they honor them as their brothers. He tells them to look to the sky and see their true purpose. Bjarni looks up and sees multiple Space Wolf ships touching down. The Wolf Priest explains that they were reinforcements, his men, no, correction, your men, that they had brought enough reinforcements to bring the chapter up to Gilliman's 1000. He didn't think for a second that 3 Space Wolves would travel all the way across the galaxy alone, did he? The ships had been waiting just outside of auger range for his signal, and to the younger man's puzzlement, he says that that means he must have sent the signal hours ago. The Wolf Priest tells him that he did the moment battle was joined, for he saw a true brotherhood worthy of Russ. After hearing all of that, I'm sure you're wondering, at the end of the day, has my opinion changed on the Space Wolves? Yes, it absolutely has. But am I a massive Space Wolf fanboy now? No, not really. But I do have a lot more respect for them, and I can officially confirm that I very much enjoy their 40K
I think they're awesome. I think they're super cool.
version, but I still despise them in 30K. The Wolves went from being a bunch of hypocritical, moronic assholes to honorable warriors steeped in tradition that genuinely give a shit about saving humanity and defending the innocent. The whole bit with the Wolfen where they stood up for a bunch of mutants, never in a billion years would the 30K Space Wolves do something like that. Standing up to the Inquisition or the Dark Angels, now that's not that far out of the realm of possibility to be fair, but they wouldn't do it to protect people. It would be for some stupid reason like going to war over a perceived insult. There's been a lot of rumors about who the next Primarch to return to the setting will be, and for me, I really hope it's not Leman Russ. As without him around, it sure does seem like his sons are in a much better place. But maybe there's hope. Lionel
Sanguinus. Bring back Sanguinus.
Johnson is a totally different character now. He's older and wiser, and not only had he learned some humility, but he grew up enough to actually seek forgiveness.
He is actually pretty cool. I read up on him a bit, and I think Dark Angels are pretty BA, not gonna lie.
And apologize for the mistakes of his past, which, you know, if I'm just speaking from the heart to you, that's one of the manliest things that you can do in my opinion. I absolutely cannot stand hypocrites and people who are incapable of admitting wrongdoing. The Lions novel was amazing. If they decide to bring Leman Russ back in a similar pretense, where he's like a wise old Odin figure, oh, that would be fucking awesome. I would be on board with that. But if it's the same incarnation of the Leman Russ that we know from 30K, I have a feeling that everything that's good about the Space Wolves, or at least what I personally enjoy, is going to be ruined. But what are your thoughts on all this? Are you a fan of the Space Wolves? Do you like them in 30K and in 40K, or only one over the other? Did I fundamentally miss the mark with how they're represented? And what do you think is going to happen when Leman Russ actually comes back? Is the setting gonna go full-blown wolf time? Is he gonna come back as a feral 10-foot-tall space marine werewolf, or a wise old patriarch that guides his sons into a new age? I'll admit there's still a lot of Space Wolf reading material that I haven't touched yet. So let me know all of your recommendations for Space Wolf reading material down in the comment section below, as I'm definitely intrigued and want to know more about these guys. Anyways, that's all I had to say on this particular subject. Big thanks to everyone who supports the work that I do, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Well, all right then. Interesting stuff. Hopefully, Volt wakes up here soon. Up yet. I wonder if with that one cheat engine you can just like give yourself multiple Space Marines. I'm gonna look. So on the Nexus here, portraits, AI portraits. But everyone's making for this, huh? Let's see. This is media, mods, popular all time. So I know Toy Box does some stuff. I just wonder if make multiple Space Wolves. Party editor. Wonder what that party editor does. Party editor lets you edit almost any aspect of your character. Make sure you explore all different disclosure toggles. You can edit class, stats, faction feats, buffs, abilities, spells, spellbooks, as well as composition of your party. Composition of your party. Doesn't specifically say it. I'm like looking for something that would. It's all just portraits. Save game editor, lore friendly portrait pack. Allow modded achievements. Oh, okay. Reshade, portrait pack, SFW, portraits, all portraits. Characteristic and skill check. Oh, okay, that's skill check stuff. Yeah, I think everything's just going to be portraits for right now. The only thing that might be able to do it is that first one, is this toy box, but I'm not ready to use it yet. The second playthrough, I kind of want to use it and see what I can, what I can do. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and load in though, and we're gonna switch our stream over. Hey, what's the deal here? That back over. Alright, so yeah, we got done doing some lore with the Space Wolves, and now we're switching over to actually playing. So Folt said yesterday about 9 we'd see him, so probably about 10. But we just got him. We'll go outside. This was the moment that the power went out yesterday. We had just got him, we were like looking forward to playing him, and then power didn't come back on till 7 a.m. Woke me up. I'm not gonna actually do anything until he gets here, but I'm just gonna go over all of the stats and everything with our Space Wolf. So he has a 103 HP, 6 deflection, 75% armor, 70% dodge. It's pretty good. And look at those stats: 95 weapon skill, 80 ballistic skill, 85 strength, 85 toughness. And then his bolt pistol and combat knife. I hope we get something really absolutely crazy for a hand bolter for him. Maybe like a axe or a hammer. Emma. Active abilities: go for the throat. Ulfar immediately moves the target, ignoring attacks of opportunity, and performs a single melee attack with plus 10+2 times strength bonus % critical damage. And he gets run and gun, and he gets revel and slaughter, and he gets controlled shot and rapid fire. Holy shit. He gets some really good abilities. Revel and slaughter, run and gun, go for the throat. This is a great build. Kick. The Arch Militant makes a melee strike with a kick, dealing 16 damage instead of weapon damage. This attack does not count towards the attack limit per turn and counts as a single melee attack for the purposes of versatility. This attack cannot be parried and will push the target 2 cells away. So you could be in melee range with him and then kick him away, have a melee hit, like go for the throat or something, and then kick him away, and then you just like revel and slaughter and like controlled shot or something like that, or rapid fire. Then wildfire. The Arch Militant next attack will cost 0 AP, will not count toward the attack limit this turn, and will grant a stack of versatility even if the attack type is the same as the last attack. Then it gets -1 for every 4 stacks of versatility. So once you get up to a certain amount of versatility, it's just like a free attack for you. Nice. 3 AP, so about 16 versatility stacks, and good. Devastating attack. Arch Militant's next attack, if it hit, will cause all the targets to make a toughness resistance test with -18 penalty. Fail, the targets will suffer a negative effect based on the attack's damage type. Impact damage knocks the target prone. Sweet. Piercing and rending damage inflict bleeding and slowed. Energy and all other damage inflict blinded. You could maybe devastating attack and then kick, then knock him prone, or devastating attack and then your knife for piercing, and then devastating attack for your shots for blind. That's pretty good synergy. And he gets firearm mastery, which is really nice, and steady superiority until end of combat. The Arch Militant can make 1 additional attack each turn, including 1 additional attack on the turn this heroic act was used. The first attack after using this ability and each turn afterwards costs 0 AP. So maybe you like pop this first to get extra attacks every turn, and then next time you do a firearm mastery and make a bunch of crazy single shots. Dope. And look at all these proficiencies: plasma weapon, melt weapon, flame weapon, heavy armor, power armor. So he has heavy armor and power armor. Interesting. Because with my character, that was also a thing that I was asking whether or not having heavy armor and having power armor would be like bonuses to each other. I don't know which one I have heavy armor. It's in this one though, I'm pretty sure. Got the wrong one, that's why. There's both heavy armor and power armor efficiency, like in order to be able to wear them. And these proficiencies, I was asking myself if heavy armor and power armor proficiency stacked, and it appears that it does, because he has both heavy armor proficiency and power armor proficiency, and the developers in the game wouldn't do that unless they did stack. That was something I always wondered. I don't have access to my ship right now, but he has ship abilities that I'm interested in. They're like attack abilities though. Weird. Swift Hunter. Ulfar may use MP after attacking or using abilities. Nice, so he can just continue to move till all of his movement points are spent. That's pretty dope. Fenris is a death world of fire and ice located on the fringe of the Segmentum Solar and home to the Space Wolves, chapter of the Adeptus Astartes. Each planet year, Fenris goes through a cycle of devastating cataclysms which has turned its inhabitants into hardened and unyielding warriors, from whose number only the select few are deemed worthy to bolster the ranks of the Space Marines of Leman Russ. Cool. Survival instinct. Once per combat, when the wounds of a Death World character drop below 30%, they gain plus 20% of their maximum wounds as temporary wounds. Death World characters also gain plus 20% bonus to dodge and armor while they have at least one temporary wound from any source. Well, that's good, because I'm going to be giving him a bunch of temporary wounds. Be buffing the hell out of him, turning him into an actual fucking meat grinder. Adeptus Astartes, commonly known as Space Marines, these genetically engineered super soldiers are the most powerful and ferocious warriors of the Imperium. Soldier is a master of all ranged weapons, quickly able to assume an advantageous position from where they stand ready to rain fire on the enemy. While well-trained and highly diverse range of arms, a soldier is particularly proficient at blasting their targets with burst fire and area weapons. movement and range attacks, cover and dodge burst fire area attacks. And then of course Revel and Slaughter, where you get plus to your ballistic skill, crit chance, and crit damage. Firearm mastery. Unpredictable. Soldier gains plus 7% crit hit chance. This bonus is doubled against enemies from which the soldier is protected by cover at the moment of attack. That's pretty nice. Second skin. Soldier's medium armor does not reduce dodge. Huh. So you could put him in medium armor then, huh? Interesting. Controlled shot. The soldier gives a sign that they are about to open fire. The soldier and their allies will automatically dodge the soldier's next attack. Got a bunch of crazy stuff going on. Got a lot of stats. I like the little rings he's got on the back of here. Same as these. Got runes carved in it. F fish. Fish F. Whichever. I'm gonna take a break. I'll be right back. back. Gotta make a settings change on here. Something's going on with the graph. Oh, camera does not want to turn on right now. We're not doing any camera for a couple hours. Hey, I fixed it. Just had to turn it on and off again.
I forge a path through the sagas.
Don't exactly know what I'm supposed to be doing, so I should probably figure that out before he gets on. We still need to find Henrix and Cassia. And figure out where these people are. We wandered around for hours yesterday trying to find them. We did get the Space Wolf, which was good. Oh, holy shit. And they've been under our nose this entire time. No fucking way. Thought they were like somewhere else. I did. Dark Tide's soundtrack? I'm gonna put it on.
With each step, I forge my destiny among the stars.
The corpse. Oh, that's the corpse dump where He throws them and they just end up down there. There's some people in these tubes. Cage. Oh, and some goods. Get over here.
Know your duty.
Not know. Yeah, I tried talking to the minions. I've tried talking to him a bunch of times. I've like exhausted all of his dialogue. I wonder how you get over to the side things. Looks like there's like this, like a stairway would come out from here. Where we got the Space Marine from. Chancellor Viserion brought news of troubling events on Footfall. Being captured imposes certain unfortunate limitations on controlling the Von Valacious Protectorate directly. Till these circumstances are remedied, the rogue trader's duties of maintaining and enriching the dynasty are considered negligible. The Chasm. Champion of the arena, the bloodstained proselytes have entered the anatomical opera for reasons unknown only to themselves. Cervantes has advised the rogue trader to take a good look at them. Such a chance may not present itself in the Fatal Thirst arena. Okay, so I think we have to go to the arena. Cervantes advised the rogue trader to take a good look at them. I don't see any proselytes.
The Divine watches over us.
Hold on. Good fucking calls from India. I don't know anyone in India. Go away. Sorry. Hey, tomorrow's Tyler's birthday. Dermatology appointment. I have to go to bed early in order to be ready for that. Never mind about that. So I think
Let us walk this
there's
path to the end.
another arena fight that we have to go do. Because I've exhausted all of my dialogue there. I have no idea how to get to the back where they're located. And I've thoroughly talked to everybody in that room. So I guess there's a third arena fight or something. I was asking GPT about it. That's what they said. Oh. What? The arena is over here. This
We
is
are
the portal
bound
to the
by
arena.
the blood of my... With each step, I forge my destiny
Well,
among
the first thing I'm
stars.
noticing is that the formation is all jacked up. Whatever reason. Go.
We shall reclaim what is rightfully
Hey,
ours.
much better. This cinematic save. Party rockin'.
Know your duty.
Still can't take the portal to the arena. There's something left that we gotta do. I haven't figured it out yet. What it is exactly.
Let us walk this path to the end.
Already taken over the pit, I believe.
Let us raise our cups at Vater, in honor of deeds accomplished and in expectation of those yet to come.
I love the voice changer that they add to his voice. But the voice for him is done, the voice actor is really good, is what I'm trying to say.
This is the name given on Fenris to a pack father, a commander or captain. An Edvater answers to a Jarl, the commander of a great company. Since you are the one who commands your crew, and I follow you at present, I am granting you the honored title of Et Vater.
Oh, cool. That's pretty neat. I could never presume to give orders to one of the Emperor's angels. You should be in command. Thank you for this honor. A fine addition to the list. Sounds rather savage. Nod wordlessly. Pretty sure we gotta give him the honor daps. Thank you for this honor.
Be worthy of it, and see that you do not disgrace this glorious rank.
Was he planning to get out of here?
I have had a few thoughts on that score, but don't try to pry them out of me. When the time comes, I will share them with you.
Which is pretty smart. I mean, I understand that. He doesn't completely trust us yet. And he doesn't want to give away his plans. Despite his worthy attempt to play the fool, the Space Wolf cannot deceive you. Ulfar does not fully trust you and is carefully observing your reaction. Yeah. Why do you devour your enemies, though?
Why do you think?
The Omophagia, okay, is clearly involved here. The genetic gift granted to the Astartes by the Emperor. This organ links the brain and stomach of a space marine, allowing him to absorb information from the genetic code of any flesh he consumes. Has to do with the homophagia. That's a word.
You are very well informed. Far more than a common mortal ought to be. Yes, it is true that I have gorged on the flesh of my enemies to reap the secrets from the steaming flavor of their meat. I have slain many Xenos and feasted on their flesh. My captors have watched me do it and taken glee in it, while I have been gathering information and planning my escape.
That's pretty smart. Especially around here, I'm pretty sure they like it. And if he learns from, eating them, he probably knows way more about this place than anyone else in our entire retinue. But tell me about your brothers, the Space Wolves.
Not everyone is granted the right to ask such questions. But you, I shall allow it. What do you want to know about the Astartes from the glorious Fenris?
Who are the Space Wolves?
Vilka Fenrika. That is our name in the old tongue of our world. We are the fiercest of the All-Father's warriors, his executioners, his retribution.
God damn.
Our fearless Wolf King is Lehman Russ, son of the All-Father. Our world is Fenris, and our home the Fang, which rises from the world's spine into orbit. We are the thunder in the bloody storm of battle that calls to us. That is who we are.
God damn. Glory to the Wolves of Fenris.
But there is more to our spirit than grim destruction alone. In the Hall of Heroes, we hold feasts the likes of which you will see nowhere else. To thundering laughter, we raise our horns, tell our sagas, and honor our glorious fallen. Though the body of an Astartes is built to be immune to the effects of drink, We invented a way around this taboo. The mead we brew can overcome even our blood. It makes us drunk and makes our feasts jovial occasions. Ah, mead. You can brew it nowhere else but on good old Fenris. No other world is home to such poisonous plants.
Fenris, what is it like?
Fenris is home. A harsh land of harsh winters and harsh people. When comes the Hellwinter, a fearsome season of frosts, the merciless world sea freezes, and great white bears, snow wyrms, and ice trolls go on the hunt. Then, the murderous frost retreats, and boats of harpooners sail out to ply their craft, capturing sea snakes and krakens.
Sea snakes and krakens, huh? Right on.
And then comes the season of fire. Volcanoes awaken. Waves wash over whole islands, and only the land of Asaheim offers salvation to those whose blood and grit win them the right to live upon it. Clan fights clan, crows circle over battlefields, and wolf howls rise up to the sky. That is my beloved home. There is no place in the universe like it.
Sounds beautiful.
Tell me, Edfater, what is the most fearsome foe on Fenris?
Lore Imperium test failed. Fenris is known as a death world for good reason. There must be dozens of lethal creatures that inhabit the planet, but which more fearsome than the rest? Those giant wolves?
One cannot speak of Fenris without mentioning its wolves. Wolves are fearsome, but there are no more fearsome wolves than us. The curse of the Wolfen is the most fearsome and most terrible foe on Fenris. In the heart of every brother, there lives a dark beast, bloody and forever ravenous. He hungers to kill, not for glory or duty, or his battle brothers, but solely for the sake of killing. For he who falls to that dark beast, there is no joy or thrill in slaughter. There is but dull rancor.
Cool. In icons I have seen, Astartes look much less wild. For a Space Marine chapter, you are far from orthodox. My curiosity has been satisfied. Oof. I don't know if I want to ask him these things, but I want to hear it, so here goes.
Our gene seed is unique. Lehman Russ blessed us with the Canis Helix, a genetic gift that heightens our senses, making them sharper than those of brothers from other chapters. The Canis Helix kindles a bloodthirst in our hearts and changes our appearance to resemble the lethal wolves of Fenris.
For a Space Marine chapter, you are far from orthodox.
The wolves do not take orders from outsiders. We keep the old ways, not the Codex Astartes. We fight in packs, and we are trained and healed by our wise rune and wolf priests. We do not find honor in adorning ourselves in laurels, but instead etch the full names of our fallen kin as a promise of vengeance, and draw strength from that promise.
What do you believe in?
We believe in the great wolves, in the deadly Blackmane and fierce Drakan the Thunderwolf. In redoubtable Hagar the Mountain Wolf, and in the Bloodied Hunter. In the wolf that stalks between stars, who follows us wherever we may go. And in the uncanny two-headed Mordkai, guard of the realm of the dead. Only the great wolves show us their favor. The others are more malign, but each teaches us a lesson. For that, we praise and honor them.
That mean you do not believe in the immortal emperor of humanity as a god?
The All-Father is not a god. He is the best of all humans, our perfect forebear. His blood flowed through the veins of Lehman Russ, and Russ's blood flows in me. Does that make me a god? My respect for him has no end, and I am ready to die for him. But what place does faith have here? Is the All-Father like the massive Iron Wolf, whose every tuft of fur forms a mountain on the surface of Fenris? Or is he as enormous as the Sun Wolf, which rises to hunt every morning and fills our world with light? The All-Father is not a god, but the highest of humanity. Ordinary humans struggle to grasp this. But we, his warriors and offspring, remember the truth. It is difficult for non-Fenrisians to grasp our wisdom. It comes along with the cold and death.
What else do your wise priests do?
Lacan the Ruined Wolf once shared the mysteries of the healing potions and the secrets of magic sagas. He taught them to see the past and future in throne runes, to call down storms, and to carve powerful talismans.
Lore warp test failed. You sense not the slightest power emanating from the charms Ulfar is wearing. You speak of full names that give you strength. What is your name in that case?
Ulfar Redmane. That is what my brothers call me.
Another perception test failed. Primitive culture of Fenris could well have bestowed such a simple and banal name upon Ulfar. There is nothing to wonder at here. All you feel is pity for the Space Wolf. Okay.
Do you? And there I was, about to round off my story with a short 400-verse saga about the gifts of Lacan the Ruined Wolf.
Curiosity has been satisfied.
Should what I told you reach other ears, I shall take your tongue.
Good lord. How did you end up here?
What do you want to know? What brought the Space Wolves to the Expanse? Or how I ended up in the non-human's Dark City?
Why did you come to the Cronus Expanse?
An inquisitor by the name of Calcazar put out a call for aid. My Wolf Lord did not refuse him, and had 2 packs deployed to the Expanse. We never trusted this ally, but a blood debt for a service rendered in the past forced our hand.
Did you owe the Inquisitor?
He saved our brother who had lost the pack and was unable to look after himself or the chapter's honor. Calcazar returned our brother to Fenris and kept secret the misfortune that had befallen him. The Jarl knew that the Inquisitor's actions were driven by opportunism, and the desire to have us mighty warriors in his debt. But honor forced him to be hospitable to the stranger, and swear an oath of friendship.
Why did the Space Wolves not trust the Lord Inquisitor?
The Inquisition. Pah! Rats, scurrying around the Allfather's house and ruling it in the Master's absence. Cowards they are. The last into battle, but the first on any war council. We saw what they were worth in the months of shame.
Oh, we succeeded this lore check. You know the story after the first war for Armageddon, in which the Space Wolves and the forces of Armageddon fought off the terrifying incursion of the archenemy. The Inquisition ordered that the heinous event be covered up and the planet's mortal defenders be thrown into labor camps and sterilized. Holy shit. The Inquisition came in afterwards, and everyone that survived was just used in labor camps and sterilized and killed off. That is insane. Wolves defended their erstwhile comrades and evacuated many people to Fenris. The confrontation ended in a bloody massacre, and the courts of the Inquisition have not appeared in Fenris system ever since. Yeah, I bet they probably would have a hard time defeating the Space Wolves. I have also met Xavier Calcazar, and I do not trust him. Calcazar has ideas above his station. He dared to speak to me without proper respect. I do not trust Calcazar, and you have explained everything. I think he has explained everything.
That was my path to Camorra, et Fater.
What do you know about of Calcazar's plans and objectives?
In warm furs, the old man does shroud his body. In cloaks of secrets woven, shrouds the sly man his plans. To know his dire purpose, swallow not the words of poison, but his gristle.
How did you end up a captive?
We had gone on a raid for Xenos prisoners and fell into a trap. We had no war machines to support us, and some of our squad were wounded, so we were forced to retreat. I ordered my battle brothers to leave, but I remained behind to meet our guests. I do not know how many of the feeble wretches I slew, but I would have killed even more had their towering piles of bodies not hindered me in combat. They wounded me and captured me. They froze the joints in my armor. When they dragged me to their ship, 2 of my battle brothers descended up the Xenos and tried to free me. An insane plan, but it almost succeeded. Almost. And so there were 3 of us taken captive. And then there were 2. And then I was alone once again.
What happened to the other 2?
They fell with honor. Their saga is one I will not sing to you. You have spilled no blood with them, nor shared with them meat unmured. Their spirits might be outraged if they knew I had sung of their deeds to a stranger.
I'm sorry they died.
Yes, so am I.
Okay, well, tell me about your time in Camorra.
These are dark days you are asking about, Edfater. Let my keen-edged friend be a witness to the ferocity of my words.
He draws out a rune-covered knife that you saw him carry in the Dark City and begins to spin it between his fingers, finding his equilibrium again.
I was given to Tarvantius for his amusement. In the arenas of Camorra, Astartes are a rarity. And he sent me out there to kill gladiators. Living as an inglorious butcher and a Xenos' puppet, I hated it. Constantly. Every moment. I had to take care of my mind before it was twisted to the 7 hells. Every morning I made entreaties to the Allfather, and every night I appealed to Russ. I trained my body, read the litanies, and in the darkest moments I recited my own saga. I recalled every battle, every wound, every brother. And that is how I survived. I always survive.
I see.
This was a bleak saga, Edfater.
Maybe, we can ask a few questions about him.
Instinct bids me to remain silent. Such knowledge is not to be shared with just anyone. Only
okay.
those who possess my complete trust.
I must take my
Fenris
leave.
Hjolda, Edfater.
Cool. Appear to be anything else around here. Here. Okay. So that's all the lore for him. Pretty neat. We got the chance to, you know, see all of that. Nothing else we can talk to these guys about. That was a nice little lore dive there.